Good afternoon. This lesson, again, I'm hoping is another easy, straightforward lesson, and I am more than willing to allow you to Google things, look things up on your phone, grab a dictionary, ask a friend. These are things you actually should have already learned by now anyway. So this first question, we're all going to be talking about triangles and the different types of triangles, and this is asking, a triangle has the measure of these three angles, because a triangle has three angles. One measures 75, one's 64, and one's 41. We want to know if it's equilateral, isosceles, or scalene. Well, equilateral, if you look it up, all three angle measures would have to be the same. Isosceles, two of the angle measures would have to be the same. Scalene means all three angle measures are different. So this would be a scalene triangle. Each of the triangle sides measure 16 yards. What kind of triangle is it? Again, an equilateral triangle not only has three equal angles, all three sides are the same length. An isosceles triangle not only has two equal angles, but it only has two sides that are equal. Scalene, none of the sides are equal in length and none of the angles are equal in measure. So equilateral, because each side measures exactly the same. That's equilateral. What kind of triangle is this? You'll notice there's a 30, 60, and a 90-degree angle. We have an acute, a right, or an obtuse. Now, acute triangles, all three angles must be less than 90. Obtuse, we must have one angle, only one, that's larger than 90. A right triangle always has a 90-degree angle. So this is a right triangle because it has that 90-degree angle. A triangle has one 40-degree angle and two 70. Well, if it has two angles that are the same, it's isosceles. The triangle has side lengths of 19, 19, and 19 meters, all exactly the same length. That's equilateral. The triangle has measures of 42, angle measures of 42, 80, and 58. All three are different. If all three are different, it's scalene. What kind of triangle is this? Well, all three sides are different length. If all three sides are different length, then it's scalene. If the two are the same, it would be isosceles. If all three were the same, it would be equilateral. The triangle has an angle measure of 37, 92, and 51, all different, scalene. What kind of triangle is this? I see an angle measure that's larger than 90. If it's larger than 90, it's going to be not an acute, it's going to be an obtuse. Obtuse means it's bigger or larger than 90, and only one angle will be. It's impossible to have more than two angles. Here we have a 4, 7, and an 8. All three lengths are different. All three lengths are different. It's scalene. Now here it's given us a couple things to do. We want to know if it's acute, which if it's acute, all three angles are less than 90. But this is a 90-degree angle. If you ever see a little square or a corner that's squared off, that means it's a 90-degree angle. That means it's a right triangle. If you see these little arcs on it, what that arcs are indicating is if they have a single arc and a single arc, those two angles are equal in measure. If those two angles are equal in measure, then two angles are equal, it's isosceles, and it's a right triangle. That's a right triangle, that's isosceles. They couldn't put those little marks there if those two angles were not equal. They would have left them blank. So here we have the right angle. This is how they signify that two angles are different. Actually, looks like they don't leave them blank. They just, that little double arc, that's supposed to be an arc, and this is a single arc, just means those are different angle measures. This is going to be a right triangle, because it has a right angle, and it's going to be a scalene because all three angles are different in measure. What did I put? Oh, I put acute scalene. I said right scalene. So I said the right thing and clicked the wrong thing. Sorry about that. The triangle has an angle measure of 56, 56, and 68. Two angles are the same, so isosceles. The little tick marks. Now, when they put little tick marks, again, what that's signifying is that the side length, this side length here is equal to that side length there. If they're equal in measure, then it's going to be an isosceles triangle. And this definitely looks bigger than 90, so it's an obtuse isosceles triangle. Same exact thing here. We have two angle measures that are equal, so that's going to be an isosceles, and this angle looks a lot bigger than 90, so it's an obtuse, not scalene, obtuse isosceles triangle. All three side lengths are different. That's what one tick mark, two tick mark, or three tick mark, that means that they're different in lengths, but we do have a right angle. So I'm going to make sure I click the right one. We have a right triangle, and it's scalene. All three sides are different in length. All three angle measures are different, and this angle looks a lot bigger than 90, so it's obtuse, scalene. All three angle measures are equal. If all three angles or measures are equal, then it's got to be an equilateral. And if it's equilateral, it's always an acute. It's impossible to have an equilateral triangle that's anything but acute, because all three angles will be 60 degrees. They all look smaller than 90 anyway. Here's an isosceles. The two little tick marks means the sides are equal. So this is going to be an isosceles triangle. So I'm looking for isosceles. That's one of these top two. And that angle and these angles all look less than 90, so it's an acute, not an obtuse, but it's definitely not equilateral because this third side doesn't equal the other two sides. That's an equilateral. That is acute. We've already talked about that one. This is an isosceles. It's acute. Isosceles, acute, but not equilateral. This one here, 3 different markings on the angles. So that's going to be scalene. This angle looks a little bit bigger than 90, so it's going to be an obtuse scalene triangle. And if you have any questions on this, just let me know. This seems to go very quickly. Equilateral, equilateral, and it's always acute. Equilateral or always acute. Here's a right triangle, and it's isosceles, a right isosceles triangle. Scalene, and all angles look less than 90, so scalene acute. Here's a scalene, and all 3 angles look less than 90, so scalene acute. That's an equilateral, and it'll be acute, because equilateral are always acute. Here's a right triangle that's scalene, a right triangle that's scalene, because all 3 angle measures are different. Here's an isosceles that looks like all 3 angles are less than 90, so it's going to be an acute isosceles. Here we have a right angle, and we have 3 different side lengths, so it's a right scalene. And last but not least, these 2 angle measures are equal. There's a right angle, so it's an isosceles right triangle, but definitely not equilateral. If you have any questions, please bring them to class, and you're more than welcome to Google any of this.